vehicle. That's right. Anyways, driving out, gonna go do some hunting. But folks, I opened up some news apps, checked some different things, and I found the best and the worst news that you will hear today. Okay, first off, on the good news side. This is really exciting, actually, and I don't know, this will play out. This isn't necessarily a revival, but it is really a good sign of good things coming in the country. That is Bible sales up 41.6% since 2022. The app downloads of biblically based or religious apps, 79.5% to the positive, and Christian music streams up 50%. Now, this could be simply consumerism of Christian product. We'll know if it's a revival if people are willing to stand in spite of bad things happening or potentially bad things happening. But here I'm going to give you something really interesting because you never would have seen this in sports world before. Former Vikings star nukes Tim Walz's failure to protect girls in sports. He goes on to say the devil has his hands all over Minnesota. Now, we never would have seen this, especially in the NFL, which has gone down Wokester Road, become a bunch of woke tards at the head of the NFL, Roger Goodell and all these people. So it was all about, BLM and let's put Bad Bunny in the Super Bowl halftime. By the way, Turning Point's got their own Super Bowl halftime thing, so you don't need to watch Bad Bunny. But listen to this. Former Minnesota Vikings, this is out of the Gateway Pundit. Former Minnesota Vikings captain Jack Brewer blasted leaders in the state for refusing to comply with President Donald Trump's directive to protect girls' sports. Brewer told Fox News that although he is long retired, he still has family members living in Minnesota where top Democrats refuse to protect girls by banning boys from their spaces. I still have plenty of family in Minnesota, nieces, nephews, cousins, and family members who coach high school sports there, Brewer said. He added, my family is being held hostage in these dark and demonic laws. When have you ever heard NFL players speaking that clearly, that plainly? And this is why the left is losing the black vote. But I've got something really crazy. You want to hear about this? This is an actual argument at the United States Supreme Court. So I mentioned to you guys yesterday talking about the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and how it is basically gerrymandered. And I've talked about this gerrymandering through racial lines. I've talked about the census and the miscounting. So basically, we've given up somewhere around 5 congressional seats just because they miscounted the census using AI and predictive patterns. Okay, that's all been proven. They lied. They stole 5 seats that way. So think of all the ways that Democrats are stealing elections. Now, just so you know, they have the Voting Rights Act. Section 2 says that they can just gerrymander this based on racial lines. Now, can you imagine if they had all white districts, special districts for white folk? Okay, that would go over bad, like a fart in a spacesuit, folks. But listen to this. Okay, this is just crazy. This was argued at the Supreme Court yesterday, and you've got to hear what Ketanji Brown Jackson says. She's literally going to argue, my kids are laughing because they heard this already. She's literally going to argue that black people are mentally disabled and can't know how to vote if they don't have this all set up. I'm going to play the audio for you because I've got audio. This is going to blow your mind. Just get ready. I'm going to sit down with some coffee for 1 minute and 29 seconds. You're going to hear the most convoluted crap you've ever heard in your life. Where did my play button go? No. Where's it? There it is. Came back. All right. Let me make sure volume's all the way up so you can hear it. Listen.
I'm thinking of it, of the fact that remedial action absent discriminatory intent is really not a new idea in the civil rights laws. And my kind of paradigmatic example of this is something like the ADA.
How many think that she was paying attention to dictionary.com's word of the day that day and got paradigmatic and thought, I'm going to find a way to use this in an oral argument at the Supreme Court?
First passed the Americans with Disabilities Act against the backdrop of a world that was generally not accessible to people with disabilities. And so it was discriminatory in effect because these folks were not able to access these buildings. And it didn't matter whether the person who built the building or the person who owned the building intended for them to be exclusionary. That's irrelevant. Congress said the facilities have to be made equally open to people with disabilities if readily possible.
Okay, you got it. So she's using the Americans with Disabilities Act, you know, the ability to turn your wheelchair around, the ability to have an elevator where one could be, ways for disabled people to access spaces that other people could access, right? It's going to get better. She's going to use paradigmatic again, too, because, you know, she got this word she's got to use.
I guess I don't understand why that's not what's happening here. The idea in Section 2 is that we are responding to current day manifestations of past and present decisions that disadvantage minorities and make it so that they don't have equal access to the voting system. Right? They're disabled. In fact, we use the word disabled.
They're disabled. She just said it. They're disabled. They can't use the current voting system, just like they can't get IDs, folks. Okay, we heard that argument. And then did you remember that video I shared? Some guy was out doing man on the street in the hood and saying, hey, do you have your driver's license on you? Talking to black people. Yeah. Like people looking at him like weird. Well, if you didn't, would you know where to get one? Yeah, at the DMV, you know? But I mean, she's arguing that they're disabled like they argued that they were disabled to get licenses. This is wild. This is a crazy argument. This is what racism looks like.
In Milligan, we say that's a way in which you see that these processes are not equally open.
Not equally open. They're not equally open because they're black. This is insanity. Could you imagine if you said that? Like, you put that on the other foot. It's just nuts. Okay, wait. It gets better. So I got to go to, which one am I going to go to next? Okay, so you guys know my friend Adam Johnson, lectern guy, the one who took Nancy Pelosi's lectern and moved it at the Capitol. Okay, so he posted this. A DC judge sent me to prison for misdemeanor trespassing. Now, if y'all remember, that's right. Okay, big balls, Edward Korstein. The Doge guy, that was his handle. Anyways, but Judge Kendra Briggs has allowed the two teens who jumped Edward Korstein to avoid jail and sentence them to simple probation, stating that her job is to rehabilitate, not punish. So somebody who actually assaults somebody, right, left him bloody. You remember this story about Korstein. He's an American hero, actually, was actually jumping in the fray because they were going to assault his girlfriend. So, and the DC judge lets him go on probation, but sends people, remember one of the other charges from January 6th? Parading, carrying an American flag around, parading. They were sending people to jail for parading. I didn't even know that was a crime until then. Don't parade. Don't carry that flag around. Do me a favor, smash that like and chat in with where you're from. Love to see who's on the stream. All right, hold on. Gets better. So I covered this really briefly yesterday. I just mentioned it. But Molly Hemingway from The Federalist did this write-up. I love Molly's reporting. She's awesome. She made a statement on the Department of War media access guidelines. Well, she posted the statement from the Federalist CEO, Sean Davis. And her and Sean wrote this together. When other credentialed outlets and journalists spread lies about the Russia collusion hoax, or the Covington kids hoax, the Kavanaugh rape hoax, Ukraine impeachment hoax, the COVID-19 natural origin hoax, the peaceful BLM riots hoax, suckers and losers hoax, Hunter Biden laptop hoax, or Biden's brain is totally fine, you guys hoax, the Federalists fairly reported the truth. I use their reporting a lot in some of my you guys know that. Federalist is awesome. Corrupt corporate journalists published lies and regurgitated regime propaganda and were given awards. They got Pulitzer Prizes for this crap. We published facts and truth, and the U.S. government responded by waging a global war of illegal censorship against the Federalists. Do you guys remember this? I mean, so at that time, it was an absolute illegal censorship war. They hacked, well, they didn't hack, they utilized Twitter, Jack Dorsey's Twitter at that time, to silence people, Google put them down in the search algorithm. All of this happened, okay? And they were kept from the White House press pool, all of that. Why were these self-styled First Amendment defenders, where were they when we were illegally censored and targeted for debunking state lies and hoaxes? Many of them not only refused to defend us, but cheered the illegal censorship efforts against us. NBC News, for example, colluded with big tech to demonetize and deplatform us for criticizing the government and the corrupt news media. So you'll have to forgive our skepticism of corporate media's ostensible new love of press freedoms in the First Amendment. We actually read through the new Department of War media access guidelines, and we found zero new restrictions on the ability of journalists to report on or criticize the government. Many corporate journalists eager to grandstand will claim otherwise without evidence, but we will show you what the actual document says. Nothing in this document requires you to waive any constitutional rights. This is, in brief, constitutes a description of the Department of War policies. Members of the news media are not required to submit their writings to the Department of War for approval. This, in brief, and its appendices addresses Department of War policy and the potential basis for such determination, and do not prohibit you, as a credential holder, from engaging in constitutionally protected journalistic activities, such as investigating, reporting, or publishing stories. My signature represents my acknowledgement and understanding of such Department of War policies and procedures, even if I do not necessarily agree with such policies and procedures. Signing this acknowledgement does not waive any rights I may have under law. That was all in the document. So those are the actual facts, folks. And as usually is the case, we are likely the first outlet to report them, the Federalist says. We look forward to eagerly covering the Pentagon, both on site and from a distance, with the same fearlessness and courage and devotion to the truth that we've exhibited since we were created. And if the new guidelines result in fewer professional con artists and media hoaxers roaming the halls looking for new lies to peddle, so be it. Okay? Now, I was going to mention something else. So this was also when I talked about the Bible sales up and everything. So this is another number that has dramatically increased, okay? So this would be, so if you remember back in the 90s, there was all the meet you at the pole, and there was kind of a youth movement happening at that time. And the numbers were about this high back then. But we have just seen, we were down to 54% of people who had said that they were committed to following Jesus. Now it's 66%. Now I will say this much. I think if you actually look at the world around you, there isn't 66% of the population that's committed to following Jesus. But we are seeing a 12% spike since 2021, and that's per Barna. So in some way, shape, or form, America is returning to Christ, at least willing to say they are. And I think as we see that play out over the course of time, we will see better results. So Sherman and BJ Bumblebee, I saw that comment. Not even federal district court. No, she's not. She's not material for anything. She is absolutely the worst judge on the United States Supreme Court. It's not even close. But folks, I got to get to the hunting grounds, go stalk an antelope. We got to go stalk some deer, all that kind of stuff. So thanks for listening. See you guys on the next episode. Love you all. Remember to go support Mike Lindell at mypillow.com /lumberjack, or call 1-800. What is the number now? I just spaced it out. 1-800-568-2865. 1-800-568-2865. Go get yourself some of those percale sheets, still $29.88. They are running out of certain colors, but any color, any size that's left, you can still get them for $29.88. And free shipping. Free shipping. All right, we'll see you on the next episode. Peace out.